Well, I think there are many points that we can see Hume's influence in our day. And he himself was not a completely original thinker, and he would be the first to admit that there are various ideas, epistemological positions of empiricism, ideas about the source of moral beliefs that he himself has inherited and is modifying and putting into a system of thought. But then he himself, not so much in his day, but subsequently, following his death, becomes influential in a number of areas. And I go through some of these in the book. For example, notoriously, Hume influences Immanuel Kant. Immanuel Kant, the architect of the Copernican revolution in epistemology, as he himself describes it, German philosopher, who claims that he was awakened from his dogmatic slumber by reading Hume, because Kant himself had been raised or trained rather in the German rationalist tradition. So he was very happy with doing traditional metaphysics with a rationalistic bent. And Hume persuaded him basically to be an empiricist, that you couldn't do metaphysics on a rationalistic, at least not a traditional rationalistic basis. So he takes Hume's empiricism on board, but also is very troubled by Hume's skepticism, because Hume, trying to be a very consistent empiricist, ends up in a number of skeptical conclusions, which Kant really can't tolerate. And so this becomes the trigger, if you will, or at least one of the triggers for Kant's Copernican revolution. And of course, Kant's influence is massive as well, not just on Western philosophy, but on Western theology as well. You know, the Protestant liberal tradition would arguably not exist were it not for Kant and others who are influenced by him. So there's that line of influence. There's the line of influence in ethics through utilitarianism, the utilitarian approach to ethics that was pioneered by Jeremy Bentham and then John Stuart Mill, is very much inspired by Hume's approach, which is to reduce moral beliefs or moral judgments to claims about pleasure and pain. That's not quite how Hume puts it. But on the utilitarian view, an act is ethical if it brings about more pleasure than pain, or more happiness than unhappiness. But it's a naturalistic theory of ethics. That's the key. For the utilitarians, they wanted to avoid any idea of divine law or natural law. And Hume gives them some of the ingredients for a utilitarian approach to ethics, which is hugely influenced today. Many of the moral beliefs and positions that people take today, whether they recognize it or not, are motivated by basically utilitarian thinking in ethics. We could talk about the logical positivist movement, which came in the mid-20th century and then went away again, collapsed under its own internal contradictions. But what we might call the scientistic approach today, or scientism being the view that true knowledge has to be scientifically justified knowledge, or true knowledge has to be founded on the scientific method of empirical observation and rational deduction. Again, that's a very Humean position, and many people who hold to scientism maybe wouldn't attribute it directly to Hume, but undoubtedly there's a Humean influence there. So we see it in a number of areas, but many of the skeptical positions that people take today, many of the secular philosophies, secular approaches to ethics, secular epistemologies, owe a lot to Hume. If not entirely, he certainly has to be given a lot of credit.